You're listening to 50% Facts,
the show where we try to answer specific questions on an individual topic, and then at the end we bring in an expert to give you the real answers.
I'm Jim McDonald.
And I'm Mike Farr.
Welcome to our show. This is totally off the subject, but on the subject. I understand that Facebook was messing with view counts on Facebook video to make it look like it had greater reach than it did.
Interesting.
And there are organizations that basically fired writers and hired video people because they were looking for more reach.
Yeah. And Facebook wants it to look like they have 1 billion people on their platform all day long.
Yes.
Interesting.
And so they made this major shift, and then all these writers are out of work. And the content, video content is important.
Sure.
But every time that I go to a newspaper site to read an article about something, I don't need the video.
Right. Yeah, it almost gets in the way. Or it'll start playing, or you got to scroll past. Or just a regular article. Yeah.
Or
I agree.
Muting it, whatever. So anyway, I don't know what that, apropos of nothing, but it's going on.
Well, yeah, and Instagram's algorithm's all messed up, and the two guys who created Instagram just resigned.
Left.
Well, probably, rumor is not pressure from Facebook, but they disagreed with what Facebook's doing or not doing, and so they don't want a piece of it anymore.
And they made some major changes right away.
Facebook?
Yeah.
Oh, since those guys
Instagram.
left? Oh, yeah,
Instagram.
Yeah.
Because if you go to your whatever it's called, your
Insights or
notifications.
Oh, yeah.
Your notifications now include like people that you might want to follow and all that
Facebook
stuff as a separate,
Facebook stuff. Yeah, I wonder if Instagram TV's doing anything. I didn't even try it. I figured nobody's watching it.
I kind of feel like nobody's watching it. Maybe we'll throw some of these up there.
Yeah, or at least a snippet. If you're going long format, you're going YouTube or you're going podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a movie if you
Mhm.
want highly produced. But if you want that organic shit, you're going podcaster. And podcast, it's just simpler too. Who's going to watch a 5-minute video through a crappy screen that's got to be vertical?
I don't know. People watch movies on their phones all the time. That's not something I really want to do.
I only do that when I'm forced. Something's weird with, I don't know what airlines. I fly 2 different airlines. I fly Southwest when it's real close, and then I fly United if I'm going further. And something's with their TV stuff where sometimes on my phone it's free, every movie. And then sometimes on my laptop, it'll be $5 for a movie. So that's the only time I watched a movie on my phone. But it is dumb. And my phone's big, too. I got the biggest Samsung or whatever. But it's still
I'm more likely to watch on an iPad or something like that.
Yeah,
but
for
sometimes the screens on the you go on flights that have a screen on the back of the seat.
Yeah.
They're not any bigger than an iPad.
Yeah, maybe smaller.
But
for some reason, I would watch it on there, too. But how do they not update frickin' planes? How does not every plane have slightly bigger seats and a TV in front of it?
I don't know. Because they're just trying to cram people in. I think that's all they really care about.
They don't give a shit. And then, and I understand there's a flight from L.A. to Sacramento every 20 minutes. There's so many.
Yeah.
But, I was on a flight yesterday, day before, and there's, nobody on the plane. There's,
oh, they hate that.
Yeah, probably 50 of us. I was we're all wasting time here. It just makes no sense.
I'm surprised they didn't cancel it.
Yeah, I think, what do they do normally? C for Southwest, they go up to C60. So normally there's 120 people on a plane,
Something
a full
like that,
plane. Yeah, there's probably 60 or less.
Wow.
I'm glad they didn't cancel. I would have been pissed. I think because it's so close, they just do it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, probably because the returning flight might have enough people on it.
Yeah, right. Or they just go San Jose to L.A. and Sacramento, L.A. all day long. So they just.
Well, speaking of movies, we're in a movie.
That's right here. Somebody actually DM'd me right after you did.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe it was someone in my Twitch chat said, "Hey, it's cool to see you on Twitch. I'm used to seeing you on podcast and YouTube, and it was cool to see you on the big screen." I was like, "The big screen," and then it clicked because you had informed me.
Yeah, we are in the movie Transformer, which is a documentary about Janae Marie Kroczaleski.
No Mark Wahlberg or Shia LaBeouf.
No.
That would be way cooler.
No.
I'm sorry, Croc, but Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would love to be in a movie in which Shia LaBeouf totally loses his shit, because that's something he does, right?
Yeah. I like Shia. Shia and Jonah Hill are my two guys right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Oh, I just saw
90s?
No, this is the end. This is the end?
Yeah.
Jonah Hill.
Yeah. With
He turns into
Seth Rogen and them.
Yes,
that's
turns
funny.
into a demon.
I feel like that's a little underrated.
I
Like no
think
one
it
talks
is.
about it, but it's funny.
I think it is. It's like a just giant like end of the world cosplay to me.
Yeah, and it's just so typical of like Seth Rogen and Jonah Hill comedy, but it's funny.
Yeah, they're just playing absurd versions of themselves.
Yeah, they're playing themselves, which is great.
But we played ourselves in a documentary.
True.
Actually, that's not the first documentary that I have been in. Not the second. Not the third.
What is it?
Third.
Netflix?
Yeah, it's the third.
Is it on Netflix?
It is on iTunes.
Okay.
And it's on Amazon. It is not.
It's on Amazon.
Yeah. It's on Amazon Video. It's not currently free. You have to rent or buy it on either one of the platforms.
What if you have Amazon Prime? No.
I still had to pay. I just bought it because Janae is an executive producer on it, so I feel like that means that not only does she have some editorial control, but she probably put some money into it as well,
Sure.
and certainly into all of the surgery. It's a very touching, very interesting slice of fitness, bodybuilding, powerlifting,
political stuff going on.
It was more personal.
Oh, all right.
It was more personal.
That's
It wasn't. Cool. It was a little bit about acceptance from the rest of the world. But I'm going to say this: that her sons and her 3 best friends have the best attitude, and it's something that we've seen reflected a lot in the powerlifting community that I would not have expected.
Yeah,
I would not have expected for people to be so accepting and kind.
Powerlifting's background. We'll tell the story just a hair too for those that don't know who Janae Kroc is. But powerlifting's background, which is me and Jim pretty much for the last Jim maybe 15 years or something. Me maybe the last 10. Is typically very blue collar, typically very Midwest, typically pretty conservative. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's expanded leaps and bounds over the last 5 years. Powerlifting's really exploded, and there's a new age of young cats rolling in.
Right.
But it's a very Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas type vibe to it. So politically, you would assume the same. It's a little bit older of a sport. Lift some heavy shit. You're 30, 40-year-old construction workers, kind of the typical game. You want to talk about just maybe who Janae is for a second?
So Janae is the current identity of Matt Kroczaleski, and Matt was a Marine who served on the honor guard in the Clinton White House.
I didn't know that.
He had testicular cancer and is a cancer survivor, is a pharmacist, and has known since he was very little that he is a she on the inside. This film it's an exploration of the thought process that it takes her to get to start to take surgical steps.
Pro strongman, world record holding powerlifter.
Not strongman. Just
strongman though. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah,
pro?
I think did some strongman. Not
pro bodybuilder. Definitely bodybuilder.
Bodybuilder did bodybuilding.
Yeah, first probably the first powerlifter I knew by name. Big contracts with like big supplement companies and would be in magazines, like big time magazines where powerlifting, even today it's rare to get a powerlifter in a big magazine.
First powerlifter to have a supplement sponsorship.
Oh, see, then that's why I knew him. Yeah, because I knew him I knew Janae as Matt in 2009, maybe in 2010.
And I knew Janae as Matt, but I also knew that there was more to it than that from pretty early on, probably 08, 09, something like that.
Well, circles in powerlifting run small, until recent. Now it's kind of integrated into the fitness space, but it's pretty small, even still, community that's been around. Yeah,
I actually have a message to share with you later that I got from her the other day. But anyway, somebody that everybody looked up to, but nobody understood what she was going through on the inside. So anyway, I say check out the movie. If you don't want to put the money into a documentary, which I think you should, but if you don't want to put your money into it, it'll eventually be on Netflix, I'm assuming.
Yeah, or Amazon Prime for free or something.
Yeah, probably some. It was produced out of Canada with the documentary channel. So
check it out.
So check it out. Transformer.
Yeah, I haven't seen a good documentary in a while. I recently moved, and even still, I've been watching like Twitch or like creating content.
Yeah.
When I'm streaming, like I stream for 5 hours, so that's like a work day. So I don't get to like look at shit. You know what I mean? Like normally, when you're podcasting or YouTubing, you can backlog episodes a little bit, so I might have like a day off and I'll do YouTube or a movie day or whatever. But like when you stream, there's no day off, so like you have to be live, obviously. And so like I used to just have like shit going, like a movie going or documentary going, but now I don't have Netflix, I don't have HBO Go or whatever. I need to get that. I like documentaries.
Run on mom's Netflix.
Yeah, so I was on my mom's Netflix, but my mom was on my sister's Netflix. And so I feel bad like asking my sister for it again. So I'm either going to have to buy it or steal somebody else's.
There are a number of people on mine.
Yeah.
Like my whole extended family, including my my adult adopted are on my Netflix.
It's wild. They don't have a login cap, right? I don't think they have a login or watch. And if they do, it's only Netflix. The other ones don't. Like Hulu and HBO don't. And it's still, they're making billions a year.
Yeah, with Netflix, it's a certain number of screens at a time. I think what I pay for is up to like 6 screens at a time, which is a lot.
Yeah, what's that, $20 a month?
Not that.
Yeah.
I don't think maybe 15.
Yeah, that's wild. That's pretty good, man. It makes sense why Blockbuster went out of service and soon. I think cable TV is suffering if not going out.
They're trying to figure out what the next model is.
Everyone's streaming. Everyone's streaming something, but even then, I don't think they can compete with prices. For you to get a bunch of channels through like a satellite direct or whatever, it's probably like $50 a month. How do you compete with Netflix that is coming out with original series that are actually good now? I remember when Netflix was DVDs in the mail. And they had shit DVDs in the mail. It was cheaper, but you couldn't even get good movies. And then they went streaming, and it was the worst movies of all time, like C-list movies only. And then they got okay movies, and then they started making their own original stuff, and it was trash. And then now their original stuff's some of my favorite series of all time, like Stranger Things.
Right.
They're killing it.
Yeah, and they have reached the point where they're starting to actually cancel things that are not doing as well.
Yeah,
which is people talk about that as a sign of actual maturity.
Of course.
So before they'd invested money and they're like, oh, no, we're this is like sunk. We have to keep going with this because we don't have anything else. Now it's like, oh, we actually have a lot of options. We can pass on this stuff, and I think that some of the stuff that they've canceled is going to end up on Disney's service or whatever. Ultimately, anyway.
Oh yeah, Disney's making their own Netflix, right?
Yeah, and that's another issue that is bugging me. How many of these different individual services am I going to have to subscribe to get stuff I want to see? I already have an issue with CBS because the new Star Trek is on there.
Yeah.
And I actually watched it in the UK because it's on Netflix in the UK. So I watched the whole thing. I binged it while I was on vacation.
And then sports or movies.
Right.
Yeah, and HBO has like 2 series I like, but not all of them. And then Netflix has 2 I like, and then you're buying all of them anyways.
Right.
It's a mess. 2018, first world problems.
All right, so fat.
Dietary fat.
Dietary fat.
Different to adipose tissue, which is the fat we carry.
But dietary fat is somebody else's fat, right? I mean, it's
animal
fat, plant fat,
nut fat.
Yeah, nut fat. That's
nut fat.
Is nut fat an oil?
Sup, ladies? What's oil?
What's oil?
Just liquid fat.
Is oil liquid fat? That's
we might have to get. So we have our boy Eric Helms going to answer these, but we might need a chef for some of this. Eric might not know. Like Eric will know how it acts in your body and stuff, but like oil to fat. There's something. There's something with. All right, let's slow down. Fat is one of the macronutrients.
Right.
What is fat? Is our question.
Right.
It's got more calories per gram. It's got 9 calories per gram.
9. Yep.
That I'm sure of. I know we need it to live. It helps regulate hormones and a bunch of different things and keep us healthy. The oil question is good, and I, again, only 50% know the answer, but it's got something to do with, like, saturated fat or not. Because some fat at room temp will tell you, like, what kind of fat it is, That's why, like, bacon fat's, like, gross at room temp, and supposedly, at least old school thought, is that is bad for you. And olive oil and things are liquid fat, and that's supposed to be good for you. And it has something to do with saturated fat and non, but also the health of that, I think, is up in the air if it's good for you or not.
That's a really good question that I don't have an answer for, because it used to be that unsaturated fat was supposed to be really bad for you.
Just death.
Or
yeah.
Connor's over here rolling in his seat because
he studied toxicology, that's why. But yeah, I think it's polyunsaturated is like bacon and things and like a steak on the grill, and that's literally just giving you cancer as you look at it.
Is he going to do like CSI when we die? He's going to do the toxicology to see what kills us?
Yeah, that's him.
Okay.
Dexter.
So we know. Yeah, and it used to be that you didn't want to eat any fat, and suddenly it's okay to eat fat, or at least it's some fat.
Yeah.
And then the relationship between dietary fat and cholesterol is one of those things that has really changed over time, and I don't really know. I don't know the science behind that very well.
I don't think there's a consensus. I think there is two different groups still. I think the saturated, polyunsaturated, and the dietary, because cholesterol is a form of fat, and there's dietary, and then there's whatever's floating around in our blood. I think there's still two camps that say whether it's healthy for you or not.
And okay, my understanding is that your body actually makes cholesterol.
Yeah, I think so. And then cholesterol makes testosterone somehow.
And cholesterol makes testosterone somehow.
And testosterone's good, so give me cholesterol is how it works logically, but I don't know.
I feel like we're going to end up doing another episode that's cholesterol, but right now we're talking about fat.
Yeah, we'll get more specific. But yeah, I think that's a form of fat. It tastes delicious.
It does taste delicious. It changes the mouthfeel of
good steak.
Yeah.
That's why that's good. I think it is a great energy source. It's like a slower burning type energy source, and that's like an old myth too that Eric can definitely get into. But slow state cardio burns fat more, but I think what slow state cardio burns more of is like dietary fat, not necessarily adipose fat. Adipose fat has to do more with the general calorie balance that we eat, right? If we're in a calorie deficit, cardio is helping us increase that calorie deficit and just burning adipose tissue, right? It's literally stored energy on our body, where slower state cardio or endurance athletes do perform better with higher fat diets because it's a slower burning energy. I'm thinking of like a wick on a candle, right? That thing's just flaring up, or the slow burn through the wax. That's how I think of kind of carbs versus fat. Fat's that slow burn, or the oil that you burn a old school candle with. That's like a slow burn that could last a day, rather than like some flint that'll just explode up. That's kind of that carbohydrate, high intensity cardio. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm scratching the surface of some real shit. The flint is the fast burn carbs, right? If I just go sprint down the hall, my body's using a little bit more of dietary carbohydrate and glycogen, rather than if I go for a 10-mile jog, now my body's using a little bit more of that fat, the dietary fat,
right,
not necessarily the adipose fat. And that's where you've talked many times of vocabulary, trying to be specific, which we may not do, but our expert will.
Exactly. And as we said, to recap, if you're not using the right vocabulary, if you don't understand what the concepts are, you can like talk about stuff and just be wrong.
Right.
And then everybody's shaking their head saying,
or what the question is.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Anyway.
What else do we know about fat? Sources are everywhere.
Yeah.
Every animal. I think vegetables. Maybe not fruit, even though I can't think of a fruit.
Is there fat in fruit?
Avocado's a fruit. It's got a nut.
Yeah, definitely. So it's...
so some, but not many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's necessary. I think you go too low, and males and females, and your hormones start to get fucked up. It's obviously calorie dense, and in the process of adding that to some kind of carbs, donuts again, things like that, are more easily eaten because they're delicious, and that's why America's fat.
And I think that we'll probably have another follow-on episode when we talk about actual adipose levels, body fat, like what's reasonable and all that. But I think that
that's all we know.
I think that's all we know.
I think that's all I know.
It's amazing how much and how little, and I guess we're going to find out like how little it really is,
or how dumb we sound. Because he's going to go like the chemical form and all this shit. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. You're like, yeah, I don't. And I've probably read it in a textbook, but I don't know any of it.
Yeah, well, obviously we can always ask him to break things down in a way that we can understand. This is the explain like I'm 5 of podcasting.
Yeah,
so.
Eric, help me.
All right, we're going to go to our expert now, Mr. Eric Helms. Okay, we're back with Eric Helms. We're going to talk about fat, what we know about fat. I'm looking at my notes, and one of the things that jumps out at me about fat is the effect on mouthfeel. That makes us maybe just want to keep eating or not. How does fat content affect how we perceive food?
Great question. And first, just thanks for having me back on, guys. And
welcome back.
Yeah, it's just nice to be back on and have the first thing we talk about be mouthfeel. I feel like we're getting closer every time.
Yeah, I picture you in my head, and my mouth gets a feel. That's just what happens. You are my dietary fat.
I will take it, man.
Yeah.
I'm honored and a little bit turned on.
My strip of bacon. My down under strip of bacon.
Oh, thanks, Mike. So great question. So fat, as far as how it affects satiety, and hunger, our natural appetite signals. It does some interesting things. Yeah. So low-fat diets definitely are reported to have less of a mouthfeel, and you can definitely see that people don't have as much satiety signaling, or at least subjectively, that mouthfeel is something that people cite. The release of cholecystokinin, that's CCK, but more importantly, that's just something that gets released in the body that influences our appetite and hormones, does come from eating fat. If you looked at a lot of studies in the 80s and 90s, they would very much focus on the fact that fat was 9 calories per gram. It was a higher energy density, and that it was really easy to overeat. And that really, if you want to avoid, obesity or overconsumption of food, you should just cut your fat content down. And I think that is probably an overly reductionist way of looking at it, because like you said, fat does add a certain amount of enjoyment to food, palatability, and then there are hormones released when you eat fat that also contribute to satiety. And if you guys remember way back months ago when I was on the show and we talked about protein, I brought up how the ketogenic diet, independent of the protein intake, and we're not 100% sure whether this is due to the high fat content or the low carb content. I would say it's probably due to low carbs. It does seem to result in a reduction in ad libitum food consumption, or just the natural amount of food you'd eat. And people typically, at least for a few weeks, eat less food, lose some body fat, and then that stabilizes and they kind of go back to normal. So definitely it's important to consider that fat does contribute to our satiety signaling and appetite.
How does fat rate as an energy source? As you said, it's 9 calories.
Kcals. Yeah, compared to CHO.
lipids,
if you will.
Yeah.
They're basically a very dense energy, and per gram they have more than twice the calories of protein and carbohydrates, which are 4 kcals per gram. So it is useful, I find, if you are trying to reach a high energy intake, which is not common among bodybuilders or powerlifters trying to gain weight, or athletes in general who just have a high energy expenditure, to include a fair amount of fats in your diet. However, pure calorie content is not the only thing you should be considering. There's a limit to what fat can do in terms of metabolism and fueling exercise, because it is not a fast fuel. So the ways in which we actually produce energy in the body, the anaerobic energy system, which is what lifting contributes to, fat really can only do so much there. And at most, it's probably kind of fueling us a little bit during rest periods. We have to rely on glycogen and blood glucose, and of course creatine phosphate and ATP to produce the vast majority of our lifting efforts. It's not that fat is directly fueling your exercise unless you are doing some very low intensity, steady state stuff. For the most part, a way to look at it, we have what's called the respiratory exchange ratio, which just means that the ratio of fat versus carbohydrate you're burning at any given intensity of exercise. And that ratio shifts more towards fat the lower the intensity of exercise. This is not... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, some of that gets confusing in the past, I think, because people just say fat rather than dietary fat or adipose. And then also with carbohydrates, right, it matters if it's like dietary carbs or glycogen that's in your muscles, right? Everyone's been on that treadmill, and it's telling you to head towards this fat-burning zone. Is that more having to do with the adipose on our body or the dietary fat we're eating, if you're doing that low intensity per se?
That's a good question. So there's a difference between what you can liberate in terms of the total amount of energy from glycogen, which is stored carbohydrate in your muscle, glucose, which is actually glucose in your blood, dietary fat or triglycerides that are there or actual having to liberate it from tissue. But it can all contribute towards those same two broader categories. However, the issue you brought up around the fat burning zone on a treadmill is almost more related to the total energy content, and then looking at calorie burning with too close of a microscope. So, for example, if I was to get on that treadmill and my goal is to lose body fat, and I see that and I go, oh, I should only be exercising at 120 beats per minute, and then I'll be burning almost primarily fat. That's great. My goal is to lose body fat. The issue is not necessarily what I'm burning in terms of calories at that moment, whether they're from fat or carbohydrates. It's that I'll burn far fewer calories spending my time at 120 beats per minute. And someone might say, well, that's fine. I don't care about burning calories. I just want to burn fat. And I go, oh, let's look at the big picture here. If you got on that treadmill and you burned all carbohydrates, let's say you depleted your glycogen a whole bunch, and you burned, let's say, 500 calories, all from carbs, no fat was burned. Was that a failure? And they'd go, yeah, of course it was. And I go, well, what's going to happen the rest of the day? You've got no more glycogen to fuel your efforts. You've made a 500 calorie sink. So what's going to get burned the rest of the day? And they go, oh, I don't know. What's the answer, Eric? And I go, well, you should have thought more. And then I tell them anyway. And I say, it's going to be fat. Like, what else do you have left? You burned through all your carbohydrates. So now for the rest of the day, you have to rely on fat burning. So the substrate you burn immediately during exercise has very little effect on long-term body composition changes. And this also has to do with kind of the whole myth of you don't want to eat after a certain time, or you don't want to eat after training, or all these different time-related consumption of fat, carbohydrates, or calories as a whole. So, for example, if you were to eat all of your calories and then stop at 6 p.m. because you were thinking, hey, I'm not active after 6 p.m., if I eat food after 6, I'm just going to store it. That might actually be true. So let's say you don't eat after 6 p.m. So from 6 p.m. until you have breakfast the next day, from 6 to, let's say, 8 a.m. the next morning, you're burning a lot of body fat. That's fine, but it doesn't change anything because from the whole time from, let's say, 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., you are storing body fat. So it's that net change that matters. Likewise, if you didn't eat anything at all until 6 p.m. and then you put all of your food from 6 to 10 p.m., yeah, you'd store a lot of body fat at that point, but you would had to have relied on body fat for fuel the whole rest of the day. So really you have to look at it kind of like a bank account, right? It's whether or not the net transactions are greater or less than, the net deposits kind of thing, or withdrawals and deposits, excuse me.
And not to dive in too deep, but that's kind of like intermittent fasting. It may help if your habits kind of work that way, but overall calories are still going to kind of dictate what the hell goes on.
Well said. Yeah, exactly. Whether the timing of your meals and the number of meals you eat and how you distribute them, if that influences the total 24-hour energy balance and the long-term energy balance, then great. If you find that you just always consume a few hundred calories less, if you use an intermittent fasting approach, that might be valuable. You'll lean up slowly over time. But it's not because you only ate from 2 to 10 p.m. It's because eating from 2 to 10 p.m. resulted in you eating less total calories overall.
Biggest pet peeve for me are illogical humans. Number 2 biggest pet peeve for me are buzzwords. Healthy fat, good fat, salmon and avocado and not fried food, and then saturated fat or unsaturated poly fats and lipids. What the hell's all that, Eric? Yeah,
so a lot of this just comes down to the way those fats are what their structure looks like. So you've probably heard of like omega-3s and omega-6s, and how fish and other sources are good and others are bad, and you need to have a certain ratio. It kind of goes back to what we talked about in the carbohydrate podcast we had. I think that was maybe 3 years ago,
something like that.
2003, the first carbohydrate podcast known to man.
Yeah, exactly. Shortly after Freud created the internet. Yeah. Yeah. So much like you probably want a good balance of carbohydrates from multiple sources, I would say the same thing is true of fats. You really only get into trouble if you have really one category just totally dominating things. Like all you eat is a ton of saturated fats, like from animal sources and nothing else. And you're not getting in anything from, say, olive oils or avocado or things like that, or nuts, etc. But we don't actually have good data to know what is the optimal balance between it all. We just kind of know it's all observational. Like Americans have a shitty omega-6 to 3 ratio, therefore you want a higher 3 to 6. But that's observational. We're not really sure. It might just be that Americans eat too much calories overall, or some other factor. So I think a good take-home is just to not probably think of any individual fat source as unhealthy, and just kind of go back to the whole everything in moderation, and make sure that you have sources from a lot of different places. We do have good data on certain fat sources being associated with a lot of health, like the Mediterranean diet. Olive oil seems to be definitely something that promotes good health in the diet. I think that we have a solid enough evidence basis for that, but it doesn't mean you replace your entire diet with olive oil. And the same thing with fish oil. We have pretty good data showing that individuals who regularly consume fish or take fish oil seem to have some indications of better health, and in even some cases better performance, but that data is a little less firm.
What about cholesterol? People say the same thing. I feel like it's every 6 months. Cholesterol's good. Cholesterol's bad. Red meat fat is good. Red meat fat is bad. And then cholesterol that we eat, right? Dietary cholesterol is a little bit different than cholesterol causing me to have a heart attack.
Yeah. So the cholesterol is another one of those kind of like we talked about with either sugar being the worst thing in the world, or fat, or what Paleo Man ate. Cholesterol is definitely one of those that typically gets villainized every once in a while. And there are individual differences in cholesterol processing, and some people produce more in their body, or rather have a better regulation of cholesterol in their body than others. But yeah, it's essentially a structural component that's part of the body. It's in all animal cell membranes, and so it is important. We don't want to villainize any of these. And for the most part, I would say that so long as your total calories are in balance and you have a balanced diet, you probably don't need to worry about your cholesterol intake. And that's probably something that's more of a function of if you're taking in too much. Now, that said, just as kind of something for everyone to remember when they listen to me talk about health, is that I'm a bodybuilding and powerlifting researcher. So my expertise is mostly in taking people who are jacked and making them jackeder versus providing like good public health information. But certainly from what I know and from my limited expertise in the field of nutrition for health, I wouldn't be worried about cholesterol. I think the associations between cholesterol and health are not that strong, and probably confounded by overconsumption of food as a whole. Versus it being the linchpin that is thought to be the problem.
Side note on your jackedness expertise, a lot of health stuff, and there is debates going on still, right, about what we eat and what's healthy, and does it even matter to be healthy, right? A bunch of people are living a real long time smoking cigarettes, and what does that all mean? We think, and I think you and I are on the same page as well as Jim, that if you have a healthy body fat percentage, you're fairly active, and then you get some kind of variety in your diet, that's probably our overall best way to be healthy, right? If we have if we're overweight, we have extra adipose tissue hanging off us for a long period of time. Now we have to dig into some things and start to worry about cholesterol and all that. Just going into you saying public health, but I think there is some a lot of correlation and relation between bodybuilding. Obviously, bodybuilding's an extreme, but if we all have a little bit less body fat and a little bit more muscle, we'll probably also be more generally healthy.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's also difficult to separate between the lifestyle habits and the nutritional habits that lead to someone being with obesity or someone being a bodybuilder versus the end point. So, for example, if you were to take someone who is very high in body fat, but they start becoming more active, they include a lot more fruits and vegetables. They think in different terms about their body. They become more mentally accepting and seeing themselves as having intrinsic value, and they have a better relationship with food. And maybe their body fat goes down a little bit, but it doesn't change a whole lot. They're going to be a ton healthier than they were even weeks and months prior at still the same body fat level. And likewise with bodybuilders, sometimes you will see some very unhealthy habits, cyclical binge eating, abuse of certain pharmacological agents which have side effects. Even among natural bodybuilders, though, if we just keep it to that, sometimes they might be struggling on and off with disordered eating. They might have body image issues. They might have poor sleep patterns. That's something I see a lot just because they're very kind of wound up individuals. So I think it's important to just contextualize that, body composition, like I would be remiss to say that it doesn't matter what your BMI is or how much body fat you're carrying. And I think it is, from a health standpoint, purely important to not be too high in body fat, or too low for that matter, for a long term. But I think your lifestyle choices and your activity should be the main thing you focus on, and to let your body composition changes be a result of good habits over time, versus purely focusing on, like, do I have abs? Because I think a lot of people get very unhappy because our fitness industry is a little too focused on fixing the way you look versus having a more holistic health.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we've been fairly comprehensive on fats here, even deeper than I thought we were going to get. But is there anything that we've missed that you feel like people need to understand or misunderstand or don't know about fat?
Yeah, I would say one thing that often comes up is people will go, well, I eat a higher fat diet, so I burn more fats. And it is true that the higher fat you eat, and for that matter, the higher carbs you eat, you will use more of that substrate. But it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If you go onto a 60 or 70% fat diet, yes, you're burning more fat, but you're also eating 60 or 70% fat. So it kind of, the net balance doesn't necessarily change. And I think people also get it caught up in their head, and this kind of goes back to our carbohydrate episode, that insulin which is higher when you're on a higher carbohydrate diet, is a fat storage hormone, and therefore the only way to lose fat is to be on a low carbohydrate diet. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that insulin can only store something if there's something to be stored there. So if you're in a net energy deficit, peak insulin levels, they can't do anything. There's nothing to store. So whether or not you are gaining or losing body fat has a lot more to do with your total energy balance. And do you have an adequate protein intake to maintain muscle mass, versus whether you're eating a lot of fat or a little fat or a lot of carbs or a little carbs. So just a nice little aside there.
Eric, you know what's coming. Favorite fat source?
Favorite fat source? I'm going to have to go with cheese.
Cheeses vary a bunch, yeah. Like Swiss maybe lean, and then cheddar's fat, or right. Like some have a little bit more carbs in them, some have a little bit more fat in them.
Cheeses are typically not very high in carbs, but you're just changing the ratio of fat to carbs, and flavor and aged yumminess or whatever. And whether it's Parmesan or blue cheese or feta or halloumi.
Your tone changed a little bit when you started naming those, buddy. The Isley Brothers. Cue the Isley Brothers.
Starts like, now let me tell you about cheese. So, yeah, pretty much all cheeses I'm a fan.
Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure, my man. Thanks for wasting your days away with us. Plug away. Where can people find you?
Well, as always, you can find me at 3dmusclejourney.com. That is the one-stop shop for information on drug-free lifting, whether you're recreational or competitive. And from there, you can find links to my books, The Muscle and Strength Pyramids, which will teach you how to train, how to do your nutrition. And for all those mega muscle nerds out there, you can check out monthly applications in strength sport. That's me, Greg Nuckols, and Mike Zerdos covering the most recent research every month. And if you want to follow me more regularly, you can check me out on Instagram at Helms3DMJ.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks to you and Berto and all the guys at 3DMJ. You've really led a path for me in my career, whatever it is, the heck that I do. But I've learned so much from you guys over the years. You guys have done leaps and bounds, I think, for the industry on a greater level, but 100% on the niche level of natural bodybuilding, natural powerlifting, and all the coaches that I see that are doing things correctly right now have come from your camp, and it's an anomaly that I think people need to pay a little bit more attention to. You guys really blazed the trail for a lot of us.
I really appreciate that. That's some very kind things to say. I'm totally honored to hear that. Thank you.
And come on over to the States, buddy. The internet's calling for it. There needs to be a dance battle. So, bring your little posing trunks. I'll wear mine. I don't know if it's going to be a twerk battle or what, but I hope to see you soon, my man.
Oh, you don't want none of that, but I will bring it.
Ladies and gentlemen, be sure to share with your friends. Do us a favor and subscribe. You can follow me, Silent Mike, with 2Ks on Instagram and Twitter. Send us your questions on Twitter, and we'll catch you in the next one.
You can follow me at the Jim McD on all the major social media platforms. You can follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at 50% facts, 50% facts. Our one big ask of you right now is that you review or rate this show on whatever platform you're currently using. That helps people find the show. If you like the show, then recommend it to other people through that method. Or actually just in person too as well. Just like say, hey, why don't you listen to this show? It's really good. So we'd appreciate that, and we'll catch you next time.